Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the United States, English language, released in the year 2015, directed by Phil Guidry and Simon Herbert, and this film is called Savageland. So Savageland is a mockumentary, and it's detailing the horrific events that happened to a very small town on the border of Mexico and USA called Sangre de Cristo. So Sangre de Cristo was nicknamed Savageland by the racist locals for this particular event, where all the population, except one, were brutally mutilated. So on this particular night, it was very mysterious. This guy was covered in blood. He went to the authorities. He has photos of what happened that night, but the police don't believe him. They think that he is responsible for the death of everyone involved, so he's the USA's newest mass murderer. So he's taken into custody, he's questioned, he's saying his line of events that really send a chill up everyone's spine. Some people believe him, some people don't, and it's basically the mass hysteria in the media that leads up to the inevitable conclusion that is facing this character. So what is that conclusion is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Savageland. I thought this was an absolutely fascinating film, and it's a very scary film, but it's not scary in a traditional horror sense. So if you go in and expecting a traditional horror film, you're going to be disappointed, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people didn't like the movie, is that it does bill itself as something that it really isn't. This is a movie more about political sort of issues and the attitudes of society and how we look at evil and how you have to personify evil. And is that something you can't really do? So if you name something and you shame something, all of a sudden we feel safer. But it's a false sense of security, and that's the scary thing, is that reality is that you're not facing the actual problem, is that you can't personify evil. Evil is a very broad thing, and evil is not just confined to one specific person. And that was the same with, Osama bin Laden. When Osama bin Laden was killed, all of a sudden some of us felt safer, but it's not really the case, because the problem is far greater than Osama bin Laden himself. And the movie really documents that, is that this illegal immigrant, he is actually blamed for what's going on, and no one is really taking notice of the evidence that suggests maybe this guy is telling the truth, is because the unknown is the scariest thing, and people naturally want someone to blame for something. And if you have someone to blame, all of a sudden you can feel safe. And I think the false sense of security that is just going through this film from start to finish, I thought that was the scariest thing, is that human nature, we can just blame someone and all of a sudden, okay, the problem is fixed. But if you don't address the problem, this is what the movie really depicts. And this is something that's not just confined to horrible events such as this, but it's confined to everyday life, even if it's movies, is that audiences like control. They like everything explained because that makes them feel safe. But if you have open-ended films, people complain about that. And I think that is the reason why society is like this, is that we want everything spelt out for us. And this movie, I thought it was very sad and actually very shocking and scary that this immigrant is actually treated the way he is that he has evidence, but once again, we need someone to blame. We need that scapegoat. And I just thought the movie, in the mockumentary style, really depicts that sort of problem in society, and it depicts it very, very well. So I thought the mockumentary style was very authentic. This is definitely a found footage sort of horror film, but it's taken in a completely different direction. That's something I really appreciated about Savageland, is that a lot of people complain that found footage horror films are just the same old thing, but when it's done in a mockumentary style approach, I think this is definitely something that really does elevate found footage horror, and it does take it in a new direction, is that, okay, this feels like something that you could actually really watch. This is something that you actually see on the news day in, day out. But this movie does have a bit of a horror twist, which I think was really good, because it does give it a sense of basically a movie, but at the same time has a strong realistic approach that will really capture a lot of found footage horror fans. So the acting was very, very good. I thought the set pieces for the interviews was very authentic. There was only one character I had a problem with, that was the sheriff. I thought he was a little bit overacted. And there's also racist undertones in this film as well, is their attitudes towards immigrants, especially in today's world with Donald Trump being the president, with the tensions with Mexico and USA, with the wall being built and illegal immigrants. I think the illegal immigrant in this film actually summed up the attitudes and what these people are actually facing. So I don't want to get into a political debate about what's right and what's wrong, but the movie really does throw that out without really dictating it. It's not hitting you over the head. It's not lecturing you about how you should be feeling, but it's throwing it out there. It's throwing it out there and asking you, if you want to debate it, go and debate it. And this movie does raise some very relevant points. And as I said, it interweaves some horror set pieces that I thought were very creepy. The horror is not done in real time. It's done through evidence that this immigrant actually collected. And there's a certain sense of ambiguity to the film as to whether or not he's telling the truth or in fact he's guilty. And I thought that was actually a big plus to the film, but unfortunately towards the the end, it does explain things a little bit too much. And I thought it would have been a lot better if it just left it up to interpretation, because the very last scene, I thought, kind of derails it a little bit. Although it doesn't derail it completely, and it's still a very impressive film, I thought there were elements in the movie that actually felt like you were watching a horror film. It's not so much a mockumentary. And so I thought the 80-minute runtime was good for the most part, but then again, it starts to get a little bit repetitive, and I thought, okay, there's a little bit of a monotonous tone going on here, and as I said, doesn't derail the experience, but I thought it prevented it from being an absolute classic. But as far as mockumentaries slash found footage horror films are concerned, I would definitely go out there and check this out. It's not your traditional horror film, so be careful going into it, but if you want something that's going to make you think, and it's actually going to scare you on a very realistic level, then Savageland is definitely one I would check out. So overall, for this movie, going to give it 3.5 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. So next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.